berrocho gai bo me yagdulu ade yo me yadibu ay 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 ha hoy de hodo
fucking love up.
Freilach darf man sein. Freilach darf man sein. Nein, Freilach Hevere.
Now that the webinar is going to start now, I just want to thank you both for doing this.
lass Hashem Tagere Brüder Betel sich weiter sehen Mit Rebbe Es lass Hashem Hasidei Chabad Oh, oh, no Talmidei Rebbe Yashirei no Hasidei Chabad.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to another webinar hosted by Chabad House and Rabbi Masinta. Really, the purpose of these webinars is just to bring some relevant topics to help inspire and uplift people in the everyday stress. So tonight, we've got a very welcomed guest, David Zidel. Just a little bit about David. David is a best-selling author. His previous book, Basic Business Calculations, has sold over 15,000 copies in South Africa. And David has an MBA from Wits Business School. He lectures around the country and internationally. And yeah, he's here to share a little bit about his newest book, Life on the Run. But that's sort of enough about, David and the introduction. David, I want to hand over to you, and you can kick us off.
Great, fantastic. Thank you. Thanks, Rael. So just before we get going, I just need to share my screen and hopefully it all shares and everything's fine. So you should be able to see my screen now. Great. So Great. Thank you. So Rael, thank you for that. So this is the book. It's called Life on the Run. And it's interesting because I've used an analogy to create other things. So I ran the Comrades Marathon quite a few years ago. I've done 2 of them, always wanting to run it, but never getting around to actually doing the Comrades Marathon. And then something gave me the impetus to do that. And that was my mom passed away and her birthday was June the 16th. And in those days, Comrades was run on June the 16th. And I decided to run the race in her honor. I don't know if it was really running away from the pain or whatever it was, but there was a goal that I actually would never have achieved. And then this made me achieve that goal. And that's lesson number 1. Lesson number 1 is the difference between a wish and a goal is a deadline. We all say, I want to do this, I want to do that. If you want to turn your wish into a goal, it needs to have a deadline, a specific date. And I didn't have a lot of time to train for this, but it was kind of half a year or 3/4 of a year. And I managed to train for it. And I did the Comrades, not in the best time ever, but for me, it was an unbelievable victory. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through a few of these lessons. It's called 18 Steps to Success. The reason it's Life on the Run is obviously 18 is high and high is life. And so that's why it's 18 Steps to Success. I'm not preaching that this is how you create success. I'm giving 18 thoughts of what could help you become a little bit more successful. There are a lot of people who have achieved much greater success. There are many books on success. There are thousands of different things you can do, but these are just 18 things that are kind of linked to the lessons I learned through running. Okay, so just as Rael said, I've written 2 books. I'm a host of the Orjet business show. I've got a YouTube channel that I've just started recently called Random Thoughts of a Business School Lecturer. And it's very similar to what these things are, but those are, hopefully it'll grow more than this. I'm the creator of 2 business simulation games. And I've won a couple of awards as we go along. The latest business simulation game is Evaluate. But let's start off with the kind of this. I'm going to start in chapter 6, and I might not go through everything in the book, but just a couple of points. So first thing for success is even difficult days are good for you. They make you stronger. And it's a very hard thing to learn. And the reason why I started writing this book was because of this. I was running a race called Omdi Dam. And those of you who know it, it's either a 50, I can't even remember, 50 or 56K race. This is the profile of the route. And as you can see, it has a very, very steep uphill. That uphill happens to be at around about the 42-kilometer mark, which is the standard marathon route, kind of a standard marathon's 42. I was running up this and I was getting more and more and more tired. And I kind of, when you're running and you're getting tired, you just look down, your head goes down, and you just carry on running and running, and you're not really looking where you're going. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to give up and stop. I just couldn't handle it anymore. And I lifted my head and I saw I was near the top, near the peak. And I thought, you know what, if I push a little bit harder, I'll summit that peak. And I did that. And as you can see, it comes down quite steeply afterwards. And it became an easier, much easier race. And that's what sparked this thought about the lessons you can learn through running, because I thought, wow, how many times in my life have I done something and I've got to the point where I'm almost breaking through and I gave up. So that was the start of it. And when things are difficult, they're hard, but there's an upside to the difficulty, is that it teaches you many different things. And there's a lovely little story that I talk about in the book of a guy walking down a garden route, and he sees a butterfly coming out of the cocoon. And he watches this for a while, and the butterfly isn't emerging completely. And he looks, and there's a tiny little thread that's stopping the butterfly from coming out. And with his little finger, he just breaks off that little thread. And the butterfly comes out, lands on the ground, flutters around, and doesn't go anywhere. What he didn't know is that the butterfly has to break the cord with its own wings, if I could say, break it on its own accord. Then the wings are strong enough for it to fly. Without that struggle for the butterfly, it wouldn't be able to fly. And we often look at struggles that we go through, and all we look at is the struggle. Try, and it's human nature to do that. You know, in behavioral economics, they talk about with the vision that you're looking at, and it's human nature to look at problems because we have to fix those problems. But if you can turn around and say, that's a problem, but what's the flip side of that problem? What can you learn from that problem? How can you grow from that problem? Then you don't look at everything as a problem. You experience the problem, you grow through the problem, but then you can understand how to go further from that, how to grow from that. So that's, and the book, by the way, it's a very thin book. I wanted to keep it light and light-hearted. If you have a look at the different images, and you'll see they're different things. The little creature that I have in most of these cartoons is obviously it's a tortoise, but the tortoise without his shell. So all these creatures are the tortoise, and I'll come back to this, but I just wanted to show you this, because when I show you kind of the next pictures, like this one, it now makes sense. That's the tortoise without his shell. And so in chapter 1, I talk about you can't do it, or you have to do it yourself. You can't get somebody to do it for you. You've got to take responsibility for yourself. And often we are trying to achieve things, and we try and get people to help us. And that's okay to do. But always think, are you outsourcing or are you abdicating? Are you throwing away the learning opportunity? As Henry Ford says, if you chop your own wood, you'll warm yourself twice. Once by doing the work, and then you can use the rewards that you have. The next chapter that I go into and I talk about is, it's so obvious, but we sometimes don't do that. You've got to put something in before you can get something out. So with a piggy bank, if you're putting money in the piggy bank, when you need the money, it's there. But with a lot of times, we're not putting money into the piggy bank. We're not building for later. And so through running, you can learn that if you want to run in the race, you've got to do all the mileage beforehand. You've got to do all the running beforehand. That's like putting your money into your piggy bank. The next point is talking about friends and family. when you run a race, we often think that it's winning is the main goal of the race. And if you win, then you're the hero. And the truth is, and especially with the Comrades Marathon, everybody who finishes, and even those that don't finish, are heroes, because you're achieving something that you couldn't achieve before. So if you achieve something, even if you win the race, but you don't have family or friends around you, the achievement is diminished. It's about doing it and bringing people in. Now, if you're not surrounded by people who are encouraging you, then look in other areas to find people. And it's like the service to others is the rent that you pay to be in this world. And it's about what can you do for others? We grow up in a world where we look more like, what can I get? But we should look at what can I give? And then the enjoyment is twofold. And also, if you are happy in somebody else's achievement, if you know somebody and they're achieving something and you're generally happy for them, that increases your happiness scale, because you've got more chance of being happy because you're happy for yourself and you're happy for them. So time management is crucial. So through running, you have to learn to pace yourself. A lot of people will run like crazy, but what is the race that you're trying to do? If I'm trying to run 100 meters, I must run as fast as I can. But if I'm running a marathon, I've got to pace myself. So your time management is very crucial there. And just by the way, with the friends and family, I want to go back to a quick little story. At the time, I was training, and I think I was about in my mid-30s, and there was a guy whose name is Rush. Some of you might know him, who was training to do his first Comrades as well, and we trained together. And then he got chosen to play hockey in Maccabi games, and he wasn't allowed to play because it would affect his maybe his ability to play hockey. So Rosh had a huge disappointment. He trained for Comrades and now couldn't run Comrades. He didn't just give it up. He came down with me and he was a supporter. And I remember coming into the stadium. So what happened is I started running, and every 10 Ks or so, I'd see Rosh on the side of the road, jumping up and down and screaming and encouraging me on. And after halfway, I didn't see him again. And I thought he's obviously given up. And when I came into the stadium, he was there. And the feeling was unbelievable. He thought I dropped out of the race. So again, that's going back to the friends and family that you can create, and you can have different friends and family in different circumstances. Looking at having your priorities, Rabbi Lapin had a saying that he said quite a few years ago, and I didn't understand it at the time. But he said that if you say you don't have time for something, it just means it's not a big enough priority. The moment you say, I don't have time for something, you're putting something else ahead of it. And the trick is to try and work out what is your true priority, or what do you want your priority to be, and then act according to that. And be conscious about our priorities, because if we're not conscious, then the priorities will be forced upon us in different ways. There's also, along that, in the book I talk about, my dad tells a story about, I think it was his grandmother or his great-grandmother, who got given a barrel of apples. And it was amazing. She had this whole barrel of apples, and she was looking forward to eating the apples. And then the one day she opened the barrel and she saw that there was an apple that was slightly rotten in it. So she didn't take it and chuck it away. In those days, you don't do that. So she took the apple, she cut away part of the rotten bit and ate the rest of the apple. And then the next day she opened the barrel and there was another rotten apple. And so she did the same thing. And at the end of the day, she had eaten through a whole barrel of apples, but only eating rotten apples. She was given a barrel of fantastic apples, but she landed up eating only rotten apples. And we need to look at this and say, in our lives, are we metaphorically eating rotten apples? Are we chucking or not chucking away what maybe should be chucked away? That could be the time that we spend on Facebook or on social media or doing stuff that is not really developing us. Are those our rotten apples? And maybe we should consciously make a decision to chuck those away rather than to half eat them, but then be too full to eat fresh new apples. One of the biggest things with comrades is that it's no matter where you finish, you are a winner. It doesn't matter. I finished, I can't even remember the time, but I think it was 10 hours and 46 minutes. I had 14 minutes left before the cutoff. And if I had won that race, I couldn't have felt any better. I was the winner of my race. So rather than defining and always looking at others and comparing yourself to others, determine your race and win your own race. Sometimes, and I'm not sure if this picture illustrates it, but if you're dressed incorrectly for the task that you want to do, or you're in the wrong game, it can actually ruin your confidence in everything and everything else. So there's a saying that says, you don't drown by falling in the water. You drown by not swimming once you've fallen in the water. We're all going to make mistakes. It's about getting up and continuing to swim once you've made those mistakes. And if you feel like you're a fish out of water, maybe you are in the wrong environment. There's a quote, and I might get it wrong, but it doesn't sound like an Albert Einstein quote, but it does come from Albert Einstein, that says, if you make a fish climb a tree, it'll believe that it's a failure its entire life. There are many things that we do and we don't feel like we're succeeding in them. And the challenge in life is to decide, should I be continuing to do that? Or should I be doing something else? Am I a fish out of water? Excuse me. Even sometimes it feels or it looks like you're in the right environment, but you're not. If you take a fish and you put it in a bowl of jelly, it'll feel like it's in water, but it's really hard to swim through a bowl of jelly. It's in the wrong environment. So in the book, I have little exercises at the end of every chapter where it gives you a few little exercises that you can go through, and maybe it can kind of help you with your thought process. But if you really feel, and we've all had this at different stages in different places, do you feel like you're not in your right environment? The chances are that you're not. And then what is your right environment? And it's about, it can change over time. And when you're in your right environment, you just feel like home. And that's the thing. Look and feel as if you're home. The other thing for success is you can always grow and see further by standing on the shoulders of giants. Get a mentor, get a coach. If you know, in sport, every single sportsman has a coach. The world's best sportsman has a coach. By definition, that coach cannot be better than him, but it's someone to show him things that maybe he's not seeing himself. And if you can, both in business and with other things, find somebody who has achieved things, somebody who you admire what they say, and get some feedback. And it can be formal or informal with that. This one I showed you a little bit earlier, where the tortoise is saying to its shell, honey, I'm home. We only have one body to live in. We need to take care of that we're living in. And taking care of it is on many different things. It's from a health point of view, it's from a fitness point of view, it's from a spiritual point of view, it's from a learning point of view, whatever those are. But honestly, look at your lifestyle and what you're doing and saying, am I doing the best I can for this? You know, every year you take your motor vehicle in for a service. And eventually, after whatever number of years, I normally change my vehicles every 10 or 12 years, you get a new vehicle. You can't do that with your body. So you've got to look after it. And you've got to make sure that it'll last as long as you can. And then you have to have a dream. You have to be looking for something. You've got to have a bigger purpose. What is your purpose? My purpose when I started running this race, I think it was to honor my mom. And what happened is, after a few kilometers, I already had a sore knee. I had a bandaged knee, but I carried on running because there was never going to be a first chance to do this again. There's never going to be a first anniversary of her passing where I could do this. So the purpose was a lot bigger than just me. I was doing it for a greater cause. If whatever you do, if you can find a greater cause or meaning in what you're doing, that'll be unbelievable. I was speaking recently to Ian Furr from the Sorbet. He started all the Sorbet grooming company. And he said that the people that they interview and that they use in the work it's not about a job. It's not about just getting the money. It's by serving people. And by serving people correctly, the reward will be money. And we often run after the reward rather than after the meaning. What's the true meaning of it? You know, there's a lovely story. There were three guys, they were building a roof, and they went to the first guy, and he was busy knocking a nail into wood. And they said to him, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm knocking a nail into wood." They went to the second guy and they said, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm building a roof." And they went to the third guy and they said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm building a holy temple." They are both from the outside doing exactly the same thing, but from the inside, it's not. The guy who believes he's building a holy temple has more meaning in what he does than the guy's just knocking a nail into wood. So this illustrates the story that I gave in the beginning of it's harder just before you break through. And we often go through life and things get really hard. And the challenge is to know, should we push through or should we turn around and stop? On the one hand, you'll have people saying, stop banging your head against the wall. You're not going to get different results by doing the same things. And other people will say, you're almost there, just break through. And that's the challenge of life, of knowing and trying to work out when you do that. You've got to enjoy what you're doing while you're doing it. It's not for the end goal. If you can enjoy something, the end goal, as I said, you're working for a service, not for the money, but the end goal will be maybe what you want, which is the money. So try and enjoy what you're doing while you're doing it. There was a song many years ago called, if you can't be with the one you love, love the one you're with. If you've got this dream of doing something and unbelievable, but you're not there yet, at least enjoy what you're doing right now. And you're building and you're learning things that will help you as you go along. And when you help others, it actually helps you. You know that when you help somebody, there's actually a drug, your endorphins, they flow, that if you're helping somebody else, it flows. And in fact, they've seen that even if you're watching somebody else helping somebody, kind of your endorphins flow and you feel better. And there's that saying, you can't, it's easier to wash your hand using both hands. So together you can do more than if you're trying to do it on its own. And I've interviewed quite a few different business people, and one of the biggest things that they say is it's discipline. You got to make a commitment. You got to have priorities and to keep going. And the bridge between where you are and achieving your goal is discipline. But you've got to have a very clear vision of where you want to go, and then you can build the steps to get there. And when you want to go, it's knowing where the finishing line is. So you need to plan ahead. Just saying, I'm going to get there, you need to know where there is. And as I said in the beginning, I said, the difference between a wish and a goal is a goal has a deadline. So it's not only what you want to achieve, but when you want to achieve it. It's so important that you dream about things, that you learn, that's where you create your greater purpose, that you're growing and you're learning what do you want to achieve. But at the end of the day, it'll remain a dream unless you wake up. And waking up is starting to do the things that you have to do around that. And preparation is essential. You need the structure first and then build the contents and know what the structure is and then build it. And then finally, the 18th step is at the end of all of this, you just need to start doing it. You need to do it. As Wayne Gretzky, who's a famous ice hockey player, said, you miss 100% of the shots that you never take. And it's the fear of not achieving is what drives a lot of people to achieve. And at the end of the book, I bring in my world structure, what I call my world structure. We have these little circles, and each little circle is some other aspect of our life. And this is like a cell in the body even. And often one little cell is not going right, that little dot over there. And all we look at is that little dot. But even inside that dot, it's got hundreds of other little circles. And each of those circles are some are up and some are down and sideways. You're not going to get everything heading all up at the same time. But luckily, they won't all head down at the same time. And having the belief that when things are down, they can go up. And also understanding that when things are up, they can go down is what kind of changes your perspective. And you can live in an attitude of gratitude, always looking at what have you got? When we hit problems, it's human nature to focus on that problem. Stop yourself and ask, yes, that is a problem, but what can I be grateful for? And the reason for that is, when you look at things differently, you see different things. And along those same lines, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at will change. And so all I'm trying to do with tonight's talk is to give you things to think about, because we believe certain things and we run the world according to those beliefs. But what I'm going to challenge you for is don't believe everything you think. We have beliefs and we think things, and they might just not be true. And imagine if you live your whole life according to those things and they're not true. We have...
Sure, David, that was really inspiring. Hey, there's a lot to, I think there's a lot to unpack there. I kind of didn't want to interrupt you while you were speaking, because I think you had a really good flow. I just want to make two comments here. I think, at least personally, if I share my personal experience, trying to enjoy things while you're going through a difficult period is definitely one of the most challenging And then coupled with that is trying to envision the end of a tough period. So you use the metaphor of like, seeing the peak of the hill. And I think that in times in life, I'm sure people that are listening to this will also agree, it's hard sometimes to see the end. You don't really know where the end's going to be. So while not being able to see the end and not being able to enjoy the tough period, it can get pretty dark. But I think what you've just kind of ended with here is, if you change the way that you see it, it might actually inspire you to get to the end. That kind of hit home for me, and I also just want to open it up to the listeners. If you want to post a question for David, there's the Q&A. Just feel free to do so.
So while we're waiting
David,
for questions,
if you have any further comments.
Yeah, I just want to maybe bring up this that I saw on the internet, and maybe you've seen it. So when you go into Facebook and things like that, people are reflecting, for instance, like that apple. And it looks like a whole and beautiful apple, and it's amazing. But behind it, that thing that you're trying to achieve, you want to be like others, is a half-eaten apple, but you're not seeing the full picture. And the problem is when we try and chase other people's dreams, or we try and chase what other people have, the hardest thing, and it's hard, all of this is hard. I mean, I've just rushed through these, but they're not easy. Every single one is difficult to achieve, but it's just be aware that that's not what you see. And I think we have two kind of people really. There are three kinds of people, but two main groups of people in the world. The one is the kitten who looks in the mirror in the reflection and sees a lion. They see themselves as much greater than what they really are. And that could be a problem. But a bigger problem, and more often than that problem, is the opposite. Are people who are lions, and they're looking into a mirror and they're seeing a kitten. Like, I think a lot of people have got this light that needs to shine out, and what they're doing is they're covering their own light. And all I want to do with these messages is to say to everyone, look at what you have. Look at your specific skills. Look at your specific talents, and act according to that, and build on that. And it doesn't happen overnight. You don't become a overnight success overnight. It takes years and sometimes lots of work, but it's just starting to think of this and ask yourself, am I a kitten trying to act like a lion, or am I a lion actually behaving like a kitten?
Yeah, I think that's really relevant. And David, I just want to thank you very much for joining us this evening and doing this. We've had sort of not a question, but a comment. So somebody saying this was amazing. Love the story about the lady eating the apples. But I just want to thank everybody for joining. And again, thank you. Wonderful week and a good Shabbos. Cheers.
Great. Thank you. Thanks so much. One other thing, Rael.
Yes.
If anyone's interested, can I make the book available for people?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I was actually meant to ask you if you can just let everybody know where they can follow you and where they can get your book.
Yeah. So first of all, these books I normally sell through the different lectures I give, but I've made an arrangement that if you want it, you can scan here. This is through Zapper. So if you don't have Zapper and you want to just take this picture down, and then through Zapper you zap this. It's 235 Rand, and I will get a notification that you bought it, and however many people have ordered, I'll leave those copies at Ziegel's. So in Glen Hazel.
Or you can put them at Chabad House Books.
Okay, well, I can put them at Chabad House Books. I was going to offer a free cappuccino for anyone who got it there, but yes, I'll put it. That's a better idea. Thank you. So,
I just want to interrupt, and we'll offer a free psalm book, small psalm book, a pocket psalm book for anybody who buys your book.
Okay, fantastic, excellent. And then the other thing is just if you like this kind of approach, as I said, I've created a podcast called Random Thoughts of a Business School Lecturer, where it's similar to, instead of running lessons, it's just random things that have gone through my mind or that I've seen at the business school, and just to look at things. And I think this relates to Rabbi Masinta completely. Be kind, for goodness sake. And that image is from Rabbi Masinta's Be Kind. And I think it's an unbelievable message. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks a lot again, David. And yeah, thanks to all the listeners.
Thank you.